Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into a really interesting and sometimes pretty critical view on international relations.
That's right.
Our mission today is to unpack the main arguments from a specific source. It's a YouTube video by Drew Ruffy titled, How India's Foreign Policy Became a Disaster, Failure of S.Jaishankar and Modi.
And S.Jaishankar is the foreign minister, Modi the prime minister, for context.
Exactly. So we're going to dissect the claims in this video about India's foreign policy under this government. We'll look at why the video calls it a disaster and, the specific reasons it gives. We really want to pull out the key insights for you so you can quickly get a sense of this particular critical viewpoint.
And I think what's important here is that this gives you a direct look at how one quite prominent voice is analyzing the strategic decisions and the relationships of a major world player.
Right.
It definitely ties into those bigger questions about how foreign policy decisions get made, how internal stuff can impact things globally.
That title alone, How India's Foreign Policy Became a Disaster, it certainly makes you sit up and take notice. Sets a strong tone.
It really does.
So let's kick off there. What specific parts of India's foreign policy under Modi does the video actually zoom in on right away?
Okay, so the core argument, the video's main claim, is pretty blunt. It argues that India's foreign policy under this government has actually led to relationships getting worse, significantly worse.
Worse in what way, just generally?
Well, it's specific. It mentions strained ties with neighboring countries, maybe hinting at border issues or economic friction, that kind of thing. But it doesn't stop there. It also claims relationships have weakened with major global powers. It explicitly names the U.S. and Turkey as examples.
Okay, so challenges nearby and on the bigger world stage, according to the video.
Yeah.
Does it then give concrete examples, like specific failures it points to, beyond just saying relationships are strained?
Oh, absolutely. It gets into specifics. The video lays out accusations of failure in, at least two main areas it highlights.
Right.
First, it alleges failures in dealing effectively with terrorism, maybe suggesting specific incidents weren't handled well, or a lack of decisive action, perhaps.
Okay, terrorism is one. What's the other?
The second is shortcomings in keeping up bilateral agreements. Maybe trade deals that stalled or diplomatic ties that got downgraded with certain countries.
I see.
And what's really interesting is how the video contrasts this. It sets these alleged failures against how previous administrations were perceived, framing it as a definite negative shift in approach and, results.
That contrast is pretty key to its argument then, making a case for a decline.
Exactly.
But the label disaster is so strong. What reasons does Rathi give for why things supposedly went wrong? What are the root causes, according to this analysis? This is where it gets into the mechanics of policymaking.
Right, and this is really central to the critique in the video. It blames these issues on several internal factors, things happening inside India, that it argues are directly messing with international strategy.
Like what kind of factors?
Well, first, it claims that decision-making has become too emotional, driven by feelings rather than, say, cold, hard logic or clear strategy.
Emotional decisions in foreign policy.
Okay. Second, it points a finger at domestic politics having too much influence. The idea that maybe internal political wins are being prioritized over what's strategically best for India internationally.
So playing to the home crowd, potentially at the expense of foreign relations.
That seems to be the implication. And third, it brings up crony capitalism playing a role, suggesting that maybe the economic interests of a favored few are shaping some foreign policy choices.
Wow. Right.
What's really, I think, striking here is how these internal, sometimes very domestic issues are presented as having this direct, and in the video's view, damaging impact on India's place in the world.
It definitely makes you, if a country's foreign policy can be heavily influenced by things like emotion or domestic political games or crony capitalism, well, what does that mean for how predictable or even effective its actions are on the world stage? It sort of complicates the picture beyond just strategy, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that's a core theme in foreign policy analysis, isn't it? That tension between internal pressures and external goals.
Right.
The video basically argues that, in this case, the domestic side of things is maybe overshadowing the traditional geopolitical thinking.
Does the video offer any solutions? Or is it purely critique?
That's a good question. While our source material here, this specific video summary, doesn't detail them much, it's worth noting that this commentator, Dhruv Rathi, often does propose solutions or ways forward in his analyses.
Ah, okay.
So the critique often comes with suggestions for improvement, even if we didn't focus on those today. It's framed not just as pointing out problems, but maybe thinking about alternatives too.
Okay, well, that wraps up our look at this particular source for today. We've gone through Dhruv Rathi's critical take on India's foreign policy under the Modi government. We've covered the claims about deteriorating relationships with neighbors and even the U.S. and Turkey, the alleged failures on terrorism and bilateral deals.
And those proposed root causes emotional decision-making, domestic politics, crony capitalism.
Exactly. It's definitely a viewpoint that presents a stark counter-narrative to maybe more official accounts.
And just to reiterate, understanding these kinds of critical perspectives is really valuable, even if you ultimately disagree with the analysis.
Right.
Knowing they exist and understanding the arguments helps you build a much more nuanced picture of global affairs. It shows the complexity.
Couldn't agree more. So as you go off and do your own deep dives into the world, here's maybe one last thought to chew on, prompted by this discussion. If, as this video suggests, a major nation's foreign policy can be significantly influenced by factors like emotion or internal politics, not just pure logic, what does that really mean for international stability?
Yeah, and maybe even for how we define a successful foreign policy in the first place.
Exactly. Something for you to ponder. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.